सकल्यान गुणार्णवश वन्दे गुरश्री चरणारविन्दम्
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is transcendental sound vibration. It will help us to cleanse the dust from the mirror of the mind. At the present moment, we have accumulated so much material dust on the mirror of the mind, just as on 2nd Avenue, New York City. There is dust and soot over everything due to the heavy traffic. Due to our manipulation of material activities, a great deal of dust has collected over our mind's clear mirror, and as a consequence, we are unable to see things in perspective. This vibration of transcendental sound, the Hare Krishna mantra, will cleanse away this dust and enable us to see clearly our real constitutional position. As soon as we come to understand, I am not this body, I am spirit soul, and my symptom is consciousness, we will be able to establish ourselves in real happiness. As our consciousness is purified by this process of chanting Hare Krishna, all our material miseries will disappear. There is a fire that is always blazing over this material world, and everyone is trying to extinguish it. But there is no possibility of extinguishing this fire of the miseries of material nature unless we are situated in our pure consciousness, in our spiritual life. One of the purposes for Lord Krishna's descent or appearance in this material world is to extinguish the fire of material existence for all living entities by setting forth the Dharma. Yada hi dharmasya, glanir bhavati bharata, abhyutanam adharmasya, tadatman srijamyaham, paritrana sadhunam, vinashaya ka dushkritam, dharma samstapanathaya, sambhavami yuge yuge. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself, in order to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion. I advent myself, millennium after millennium. In this verse, the word Dharma is used. This word has been translated into English in various ways. Sometimes it's translated as faith, but according to Vedic literature, Dharma is not a kind of faith. Faith may change, but Dharma cannot be changed. The liquidity of water cannot be changed. If it is changed, if, for instance, water becomes solid, it is actually no longer in its constitutional position. It is existing under a certain qualifying condition. Our Dharma, or constitutional position, is that we are part and parcel of the Supreme. And this being the case, we have to dovetail or subjugate our consciousness to the Supreme. This position of transcendental service to the Supreme Whole is being misused due to material contact. Service is implicit in our constitutional position. Everyone is a servant and no one is a master. Everyone is serving someone or other. Although the president may be the chief executive of the state, still, he is serving the state. And when his services are no longer required, the state disposes of him. To think to oneself, I am the master of all I survey, is called Maya, illusion. Thus, in material consciousness, our service is being misused under various designations. When we can become free from these designations, that is to say, when the dust has been cleared from the mirror of the mind, we will be able to see ourselves in our actual position as eternal servants of Krishna. One should not think that his service in the material world and his service in the spiritual atmosphere are the same. We may shudder to think, oh, after liberation, will I still be a servant? This is because we have experienced that being a servant in the material world is not very enjoyable, but transcendental service is not like this. In the spiritual world, there is no difference between the servant and the master. Here, of course, there is distinction, but in the absolute world, everything is one. For instance, in Bhagavad Gita we can see that Krishna has taken the position of servant, as the chariot driver of Arjuna. In his constitutional position, Arjuna is the servant of Krishna. But in behavior we can see that sometimes the Lord becomes the servant of the servant. So, we should be careful not to carry materialistic ideas into the spiritual realm. Whatever we have materially experienced, is but a perverted reflection of things in spiritual life. When our constitutional position, or dharma, is deteriorated due to the contaminations of matter, the Lord himself comes as an incarnation, or sends some of his confidential servitors. Lord Jesus Christ called himself the Son of God, and so he is a representative of the Supreme. Similarly, Mohammed identified himself as a servant of the Supreme Lord. Thus, whenever there is a discrepancy in our constitutional position, the Supreme Lord either comes himself or sends his representative to inform us of the real position of the living entity. Therefore, one should not make the mistake of thinking that Dharma is a created faith. In its proper sense, Dharma cannot be divorced from the living entity at all. It is to the living entity what sweetness is to sugar, or saltiness is to salt, or solidity is to stone. In no case can it be cut off. The Dharma of the living entity is to serve, and we can easily see that every living entity has the tendency to serve himself or others. How to serve Krishna? How to disentangle ourselves from materialistic service? How to attain Krishna consciousness and become free from material designations is all taught as a science by Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. The word sadhu, in the verse quoted above, beginning paratranaya sadhunam, refers to a holy man or a saintly person. A saintly person is tolerant, very kind to everyone, a friend to all living entities, no one's enemy, and always peaceful. There are 26 basic qualifications for a holy man, and in the Bhagavad Gita we find that Sri Krishna himself gives the following verdict. Api siddhuracharo, bhajate mam ananyu eva samantavya, samyag vyavasito hisa. Even if one commits the most abominable actions, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly, because he is properly situated. On the mundane platform, what is morality for one person is immorality for another, and what is immorality for one person is morality for another. According to the Hindu conception, the drinking of wine is immoral, whereas in the Western world, wine drinking is not considered immoral, but is a common thing. So morality is dependent on time, place, circumstance, social position, etc. There is, however, a sense of morality and immorality in all societies. In this verse, Krishna points out that even if one is engaged in immoral acts, but at the same time is fully in Krishna consciousness, he is to be considered a sadhu or a saint. In other words, although a person may have some immoral habits due to his past association, if he is engaged fully in Krishna consciousness, these habits are not to be considered important. Whatever the case, if one becomes Krishna conscious, he will gradually be purified and will become a sadhu. As one progresses in executing Krishna consciousness, his bad habits diminish and he attains to saintly perfection. In this regard, there is the story of a thief who went on a pilgrimage to a holy town. En route, he and the other pilgrims stopped to rest overnight at an inn. Being addicted to stealing, the thief began making plans to steal the other pilgrims' baggage, but he thought, I'm going on a pilgrimage, so it doesn't seem appropriate that I should steal this baggage. No, I shall not do it. Nonetheless, due to his habit, he could not keep his hands off the baggage. So, he picked up one person's bag and placed it in another place, and then another person's bag and placed it elsewhere. He spent all night placing different bags in different places, but his conscience bothered him so much that he could not take anything from them. In the morning, when the other pilgrims awoke, they looked around for their bags and couldn't find them. There was a great row, and eventually, one by one, they began to find the bags in various places. After they were all found, the thief explained, Gentlemen, I am a thief by occupation. Being that I am habituated to stealing at night, I wanted to steal something from your bags, but I thought that since I am going to this holy place, it is not possible to steal. So I may have rearranged the baggage, but please excuse me. This is the characteristic of a bad habit. He does not want to commit theft anymore, but because he is habituated, sometimes he does. Thus, Krishna says that one who has decided to refrain from his immoral habits and make progress in Krishna consciousness is to be considered a sadhu, even if, out of past habit or by chance, he yields to his fault. In the next verse, we find that Sri Krishna says, Shipram bhavati dharmatma, shashvat chantim nigekati, kaunteya pratijanihi, name bhakta pranashyati. he quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. Because one has committed himself to Krishna consciousness, it is proclaimed here by Sri Krishna that within a very short time he will become saintly. One may pull the plug out of an electric fan, and the fan may still go on, even though the juice has been disconnected. But it is understood that the fan will soon come to a stop. Once we take shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, we turn the switch off for our karmic activities. And although these activities may still revolve, it is to be understood that they will quickly diminish. It is a fact that whoever takes to Krishna consciousness does not have to endeavor independently to become a good man. All the good qualifications will automatically come. It is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam that one who has attained Krishna consciousness has simultaneously attained all good qualities. On the other hand, if a person is devoid of God consciousness and yet has many good qualities, his good qualities are to be considered useless, for he will not in any way be prohibited from doing that which is undesirable. If one is devoid of Krishna consciousness, he is sure to commit mischief in this material world. Janma karma chami divyam evam yo veti tatvata tyaktvadeham punar janma naiti mam eti sarjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. 4.9. The mission for which Krishna appears is here further explained. When he comes with some mission, there are some activities. Of course, there are some philosophers who do not believe that God comes as an incarnation. They say, why should God come to this rotten world? But from Bhagavad Gita we understand otherwise. We should always remember that we read Bhagavad Gita as scripture, and whatever is spoken in Bhagavad Gita must be accepted. Otherwise there is no reason in reading it. In Gita, Krishna says that he has come as an incarnation with a mission, and along with his mission, there are some activities. We can see, for example, that Krishna is active as chariot driver for Arjuna and engages in so many activities on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Just as when there is war, one person or nation may side with another person or nation and show partiality, Lord Krishna on the battlefield shows some partiality and sides with Arjuna. Actually, Krishna is not partial to anyone, but externally it appears that he is partial. This partiality, however, should not be accepted in the ordinary sense. In this verse, Krishna also points out that his descent into the material world is transcendental. The word divyam means transcendental. His activities are not in any way ordinary. Even today, in India, at the end of August, the people are accustomed to celebrating Krishna's birthday, regardless of sect. Just as in the Western world, Jesus Christ's birthday is celebrated at Christmas. Krishna's birthday is called Janmashtami, and in this verse, Krishna uses the word Janma in referring to my birth. Because there is birth, there are some activities. Krishna's birth and activities are transcendental, which means they are not like ordinary births and activities. One may ask, how is it that his activities are transcendental? He is born. He takes part in a battle with Arjuna. He has a father by the name of Vasudeva and a mother, Devaki, and a family. What can be considered transcendental? Krishna says, Evam yo veti tattvata. We must know of his birth and activities in truth. When one knows of Krishna's birth and activities in truth, the result is, Tyaktva punajanmanaitini mam etis, when he leaves this material body, he is not born again, but goes directly to Krishna. This means that he becomes a liberated soul. He goes to the eternal spiritual world and attains his constitutional position, full of bliss, knowledge, and eternality. All this can be obtained simply by knowing in truth the transcendental nature of Krishna's birth and activities. Ordinarily, when one quits the body, he has to take up another body. The lives of the living entities are going on simply due to the living entities, changing dress from one body to another, transmigration of the soul, according to the work of the living entities. At the present moment, we may think that this material body is our actual body, but it is like a dress. In reality, we do have an actual body, a spiritual body. This material body is superficial compared to the real spiritual body of the living entity. When this material body becomes old and worn out, or when it is rendered useless by some accident, we put it aside as we might put aside a soiled or ruined suit and take up another material body. Vashamsi jirnani yatha vihaya navanati naro parani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi. As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, similarly, the soul accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. In the beginning, the body is the size of a pea. Then it grows to become a baby, then a child, a young boy, a youth, a grown man, and an old man. Finally, when it becomes useless, the living entity changes into another body. The body is therefore always changing, and death is simply the ultimate change of the present body. Dehino smin ya deh, kaumaram yahantara prapti, diras tatra na muhyati. As the embodied soul continually passes, in this body, from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. 2.13. Although the body is changing, the dweller within the body remains the same. Although the boy grows into manhood, the living entity within the body is not changed. It is not that the self who was there as a boy has gone away. Medical science agrees that at every moment the material body is changing. Just as living entities are not bewildered by this, an enlightened man is not bewildered when the body undergoes its ultimate change at death. But a person who does not understand things as they are laments. In the material condition, we are simply changing bodies all the time. That is our disease. It is not that we always change to a human body. We may change to an animal body or a demigod body depending on our activities. According to the Padma Purana, there are various bodies one may take at death. But Krishna promises that one who knows his birth and activities in truth is freed from this cycle of transmigration. How does one understand Krishna's birth and activities in truth? This is explained in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Bhaktya mam abhijanati, yavan yash chasmi tatvata, tato mam tatvato jina vishat tad anantaram. One can understand the Supreme Personality as he is only by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of the Supreme Lord by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. Here again, the word tatvata in truth is used. One can understand the science of Krishna in truth by becoming a devotee. He who is not a devotee, who does not strive for Krishna consciousness, cannot understand. At the beginning of the 4th chapter, Krishna tells Arjuna, 4.4.3, that he is explaining this ancient science of yoga to him because Arjuna is my devotee and my friend. For one who simply makes an academic study of the Bhagavad Gita, the science of Krishna remains a mystery. The Bhagavad Gita is not a book that one can just purchase from the bookstore and understand by scholarship alone. Arjuna was not a great scholar, nor a Vedantist, nor a philosopher, nor a Brahmana, nor a renunciate. He was a family and military man. But still, Krishna selected him to be the recipient of the Bhagavad Gita and the first authority in the disciplic succession. Why? Because you are my devotee. That is the qualification to understand the Bhagavad Gita as it is and Krishna as he is. One must become Krishna conscious. And what is this Krishna consciousness? That is the process of cleansing the dust from the mirror of the mind through the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. By chanting this mantra and by hearing the Bhagavad Gita, we can gradually attain to Krishna consciousness. Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam, 1861. Krishna is always present within our heart. The individual soul and the supersoul are both sitting in the tree of the body. The individual soul, Jiva, is eating the fruit of the tree, and the supersoul, Paramatma, is witnessing. As the individual soul begins the process of devotional service and gradually begins to develop his Krishna consciousness, the supersoul, who is seated within, begins to help him dust all the impurities from the mirror of the mind. Krishna is a friend to all saintly persons, and the attempt to become Krishna conscious is a saintly endeavor. Shravanam and Kirtanam, by chanting and hearing, one can come to understand the science of Krishna and thereby come to understand Krishna. And upon understanding Krishna, one can, at the moment of death, go immediately to his abode in the spiritual world. This spiritual world is described thus in the Bhagavad Gita: Na tad basayate suryo na shashanko na pavaka yadgatvana nivatante tad dharma paramam mama. That abode of mine is not illumined by the sun or moon, nor by electricity. One who reaches it never returns to this material world. This material world is always dark, therefore we require the sun, moon, and electricity. The Vedas enjoin us not to remain in this darkness, but to transfer ourselves to the world of illumination, the spiritual world. The word darkness has a twofold meaning. It not only means without light, but it also signifies ignorance. The Supreme Lord has manifold energies. It is not that he comes to this material world to perform activities. It is stated in the Vedas that the Supreme Lord has nothing to do. In Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna also says, Nami pathasti kartavyam, trishu lokashu kinkana, nanavaptam avaptavya vata eva kakamani. O son of Pritha, there is no work prescribed for me within all the 3 planetary systems, nor am I in want of anything, nor have I need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in work. We should therefore not think that Krishna is required to descend upon this material world and engage in so many activities. No one is equal to or greater than Krishna, and he has all knowledge naturally. It is not that he has to undergo penances to acquire knowledge, or that he at any time has to receive knowledge or attain knowledge. At all times and in all conditions, he is full of knowledge. He may be speaking Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, but at no time was he ever taught Bhagavad Gita. One who can understand that this is Krishna's position does not have to return to the cycle of birth and death in this material world. Being under the influence of illusion, we spend our lifetimes trying to make adjustments to this material atmosphere, but this is not the purpose of human life. Human life is meant for understanding the science of Krishna. Our material needs are these: the problem of eating, of mating, of sleeping, of defending ourselves, and of acquiring sense gratification. These are common both to human beings and to animals. The animals are busily engaged trying to solve these problems, and if we are also only engaged in solving them, how are we any different from the animals? The human being, however, has a special qualification whereby he can develop transcendental Krishna consciousness. But if he does not avail himself of this, he is in the animal category. The defect of modern civilization is that it puts too much stress on solving these survival problems. As spiritual living beings, it is incumbent upon us to extricate ourselves from this entanglement of birth and death. We should therefore be careful not to miss the special opportunity of human life. Sri Krishna himself comes to deliver Bhagavad Gita and to help us to become God-conscious. Indeed, this very material creation is given to us to utilize for this cultivation. But if, after receiving this chance and this gift of human life, we do not utilize them to develop Krishna consciousness, we shall be missing this rare opportunity. The process for cultivation is very simple: Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing and chanting. We have nothing to do other than listen, and by listening carefully, enlightenment is sure to come. Krishna will surely help, for he is seated within. We only have to make the effort and spare a little time. We will not need anyone to ask us whether we are making progress. We will know it automatically, just as a hungry man knows that he has been satisfied by a full meal. Actually, this process of Krishna consciousness or self-realization is not very difficult. Krishna taught it to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, and if we understand Bhagavad Gita just as Arjuna did, we will have no problem in coming to the perfectional state. But if we try to interpret Bhagavad Gita according to our own mundane academic mentality, we spoil it all. As stated before, this chanting of Hare Krishna is a process by which all contaminations due to material association are removed from the mirror of the mind. There is no need for external help in reviving our Krishna consciousness, for Krishna consciousness is dormant within the self. In fact, it is the very quality of the self. We have only to invoke it by this process. Krishna consciousness is an eternal fact. It is not a doctrine or set of beliefs imposed by some organization. It is within all living entities, whether they be human beings or animals. When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was passing through the jungles of South India some 500 years ago, he chanted Hare Krishna, and all the animals, the tigers, elephants and deer, joined him in dancing to the holy names. Of course, this depends on the purity of the chanting. As we progress in chanting, purification is sure to come.